Thank you for joining us. Good morning and welcome to the program. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwagu.
And I'm Ladi Williams. Let's tee off with an update on the global oil markets as prices rose this morning, with U.S. crude gaining for a 7th-day after an industry report showed a further drop in inventories and investors shrugged off worsening developments in the pandemic. U.S. West Texas Intermediate was up 40 cents at $53.61 a barrel after gaining nearly 2% on Tuesday. Brent crude was up 47 cents at $57 and having risen 1.7% in the previous session. Both benchmarks are trading at the highest since February, before the coronavirus outbreak in China began spreading across the world and billions of people went into lockdowns to prevent a pandemic that is now in a deadlier second wave. Prices are shrugging off the latest developments in Europe and the United States, where death tolls and new infections keep rising. With a focus on rollout of vaccines, however patchy, but risk to the markets remain.
Like, you know, I said it the other time.
Yep.
The way we're seeing the oil prices go, perhaps Nigerians may brace up to pay more for petrol, considering federal government's style of deregulation.
Exactly.
And it says when oil price is going up, then the price of petrol will go up. Unless, perhaps, they decide to now bring up the subsidy issue, which I think they are not ready.
They said they're not doing that.
Absolutely. And it's not necessary anyway. So we just have to brace up. However it goes, we just have to brace up to that. Now, here is what the federal government has to say about petrol subsidy. The finance minister, Mrs. Zainab, Ahmed, maintains that the government has no plan to bring back subsidy in any form. She also said that the government did not make any provision for electricity subsidy in 2021 and would not subsidize power. The minister, who was speaking at a virtual budget breakdown yesterday, also said government would hold the unclaimed dividends of investors in the stock market in trust and would make the fund available when needed by an investor.
Yeah, and the Minister of Finance also gave a projection on revenue targets of the government at the budget breakdown. She said the federal government has set an aggressive revenue target of 7.9 trillion naira for year 2021. She explains that the 7.99 trillion naira revenue target is 30% higher than the amount estimated for the 2020 budget. It expects 30% of the total revenue from the oil sector and 70% from the non-oil sectors. Do take a listen.
It's been barely 2 weeks after President Muhammadu Buhari assented to the 2021 budget of 13 trillion naira, and since then, the topic has been generating debate on how to execute the budget, seeing the global and domestic impact of COVID-19 on the economy. To help Nigerians understand how the budget will run and be funded, the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, speaks to Nigerians, but this time through a virtual meeting. First, she explains how the 2020 budget fared.
At the end of 2020, we had spent 1.80 trillion as released for capital expenditure, and this is about 89% of the provisions for capital. I'm saying released because in December we took stock. We found that there was still substantial amount of the monies that were released sitting in NDAs that were not utilized. So we approached the National Assembly and they agreed to extend the capital component of the budget for 2021 to be performed up to 31st of March 2021.
She then speaks on the 2021 budget, which will be driven by an aggressive tax regime, while the budget deficit of over 5 trillion naira is expected to be funded through domestic and foreign resources, pegged at 2.3 trillion naira respectively.
We have projected an aggregate revenue available for the 2021 budget to be 7.99 trillion naira. This is 36.9% higher than the 2020 projection of 5.84 trillion. This increased revenue is designed because we have plans to promote fiscal transparency, accountability and comprehensiveness. And also we have brought in the budget of 60 government-owned enterprises and integrated them into the 2021 national budget.
Nigeria is still grappling with the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on its economy, just as other nations, and the likely alternative for the government is revenue collection. The federal government says it will be leveraging on technology, independent revenue monitoring, and plugging of leakages to boost its revenue collections.
And still on the 2021 budget and the need to drive economic growth in 2021, Bolaho Aino, Acting Managing Director, Cordros Asset Management, joins us next.
And Bolaho Aino joins us now to discuss the 2021 budget. Hello, Bolaho.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. So the President signed into law the 2021 budget on the 31st of December. And yesterday, the minister made a formal presentation of the budget with a breakdown. The budget is themed Budget of Economic Recovery and Resilience. It's expected to accelerate the pace of Nigeria's economic recovery, promote economic diversification, among other things. What are your thoughts on the budget?
Okay, to look at the budget, I think it's always good to look at where we are coming from. And 2020, really, you can't overflog it. Sometimes it can sound like a broken record. It was a COVID-19 narrative, and really that affected government revenue. In 2020, government was only able to achieve 73% of its revenue. We listened to the Minister of Finance, and she mentioned that the actual revenue was just 3.9 trillion against a target of 5.36 trillion. So there was a shortfall. And it was really because of COVID-19. Demand for Nigerian crude reduced because of COVID-19. And of course, that affected our fiscal position. So on the backdrop of that, that's why this budget has been themed Budget of Economic Recovery. We expect to come out of a recession in 2021. And that's why the government has put in all these things to ensure that we come out of a recession. But it is about 30% from what we had in 2020, from where we are coming from about 10 trillion to 10.35 trillion. It's quite aggressive, quite audacious. If you look at the revenue, actual revenue was about 3.9 trillion. But for 2021, government is projecting about 7.9 trillion, which is maybe about 80% from where we are coming from. But some interesting thing about the budget, the assumptions seems quite realistic, maybe apart from a few things from my own perspective. Bench oil mark of $40 per barrel, daily oil production about 1.86 million per barrel. That includes condensate, exchange rate about 379 per dollar. And thinking about the FX pressure we are facing at the moment, we are thinking, is this really realistic? We know that the CBN really adjusted the exchange rate twice in 2020. GDP growth projection about 3%, inflation closing at 11.9%. Inflation currently is at a 3-year high, currently about 14.96%, and the trend is that it might go up within the year. So in terms of the budget, I think it's audacious, but I think it can be achieved. I think it can bring Nigeria out of the current recession or quagmire that we are in. A few things that interest me about the budget in terms of allocation to health sector, increase quite some compared to where we had been before. And I think it's really because of the COVID-19 issue that we saw this year, which affected the health sector, was a 157% increase. And really, allocation to health is 132 billion this year. The sector that had a huge chunk in terms of capex was works and housing, 104 billion, followed by transportation, 256 billion. Power had 198 billion, water resources 1.3 billion, health, like I mentioned, 132 billion. To look at the budget, I think what we now need to look about is the fiscal deficit. So in terms of this budget, fiscal deficit is about 6 trillion. And government is going to think, how do I finance this fiscal deficit? Because revenue is not enough. And they did mention I'm going to see a combination of both local and offshore borrowing in 2021. I think one needs to watch out for is the debt to service ratio, which is currently at 41%, which is quite high. That means from the revenue we are getting, about 41% is going back into servicing existing debt. And while that might not be too bad in itself, if those debts were used to finance infrastructure or finance projects that have long-term benefits or projects that span across generation, that is not too bad. But if all debts or all are used to service recurrent expenditure, I think that's where the issue is. But by and large, I think it's a step in the right direction. I think the budget can bring Nigeria from whatever recession we are in if it's properly managed. Good thing last year, we saw some reforms that the government introduced, the finance bill reform as well, the electric tariff reform as well. also petroleum reform as well. We think all these augur wells in terms of the non-oil part of the budget as well. They did mention about 30% is going to come from oil revenue and 70% from non-oil revenue. So I think it's a step in the right direction. And I'm particularly excited about the fact that allocation to health went up. But what we've seen in the time past is that in terms of the capex and the recurrent expenditure has always outstripped capex, and we are hoping that sometime we can see a change in narrative. We need to see more funds going to capital expenditure. Those are long-term benefits, and those kind of projects span generations.
All right, Bolaho. Now, I mean, when we talk about achieving economic growth, I know that a lot of people we have spoken to will tell you government needs to cut cost of governance. Now, at the breakdown of this budget, the finance minister indicated that the federal government is to spend a total of about 3.75 trillion naira as personnel costs for the MDAs in the 2021 fiscal year, representing an increase of 23% over the revised budget of 2020. Now, what does this say in terms of our cost of governance and how imperative it is now that, it has to be cut?
Well, very rightly said. So cost of governance is high, and we can't really shy away from that. But in 2020, really, what the FGN spent on servicing debt and also personnel was about 4.6 trillion, which is huge. But I think the good thing in this year is that the government also wants to leverage a lot on technology. So there's issue to cut cost of governance. Well, a major issue is also that we find a lot of ghost workers. And what the government has said that for this year, they're going to leverage on technology, want to reduce a lot of ghost workers. So a major challenge that we found with the Nigerian expenses is that there are a lot of leakages. And they have said that they're going to monitor, they're going to automate a lot of processes. I think because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw a lot of people leveraging on technology. And government said that more so that's critical for them in achieving their fiscal strategy in 2021. So they plan to leverage on technology and monitoring and also managing independent generated revenues, really to address leakages, and they want to really direct those resources to poor and vulnerable. So I think that's a step in the right direction. A lot of government revenue actually goes to that ghost workers, and if that can be covered, I think that's going to really help in terms of what goes into government expenses and also personnel costs.
Do you think we should be worried about the level of borrowing right now?
So it's two things, right? There is something that needs to be done, and we don't have the revenues to meet that. There's a shortfall. So about 13 trillion is needed to bring Nigeria out of this current economic condition. How are we going to get it from? And so is it through borrowings or through tax? And there's a limit to how government can increase tax. Really, the tax or the finance bill is want to make the government tax to be more effective and to be able to get a lot of people into tax net, which is good. But really, if government does not have the funds, they need to borrow. But I think the important thing is that borrowing should go into productive use and into infrastructure. And really not holding the brief for this government. I think the government has really done a bit well in terms of some of their capex planning. They really achieved a lot of those of their capital expenditure plan. So really, we need to borrow, but we just need to ensure that that borrowing does not go into recurrent expenditure. It goes into capex spending. So borrowing is all over in the world. Every country borrows. But the question is, what did they use the money borrowed to do? And so for now, really, I guess the worry is, so what bank usually advocates that your debt service to revenue ratio should be about 21.5%. For us, for this year, it's projected it's going to be at 40%, which is higher than what the World Bank really recommends. But really, we need to borrow to come out of the recession. We need to borrow to expand the economy. But we just need to ensure that there's no leakage, and we need to ensure that it doesn't go into non-productive use.
Right.
All right. Now, you talked about some of the reforms that the government had put in place. One of such is the removal of fuel subsidy. And we've seen the current trend in the global oil market. Now we're seeing prices rise, currently at $57. Our benchmark oil is at $40. That's about 38%, above our benchmark currently. Now, the issue is, and I'm sure you remember what happened when government raised the price of petrol, how Labour fought against that. Now, with oil price at $57, where does that leave us? Are we likely to see more increases? I was talking to Ladi that perhaps, Nigerians may probably have to brace up for another increase, considering the government's stance on the deregulation thing. When oil prices are up on the international scene, then the price of petrol will go up. What happens?
Yes, so it goes without saying, if there's no subsidy and there's an increase in crude oil price, that's going to really effectively affect the pump price at the end of the day. So we expect oil price or PMS price to go up very soon. I think the Minister of Finance also made it very clear that subsidy has been removed. And so it's not a bad thing to remove subsidy. I know things are a bit difficult in the country, but I guess the challenge and what people always advocated for, if subsidy is removed, just to ensure that it's used into productive sector, it gets to the vulnerable citizens and it's not diverted or it's not misused. So, like you said, it goes without saying, we expect PMS price to go up if the government is staying true to its word that subsidy has been removed. I know there might be some resistance from Labour, as expected. Really, this is a difficult year. Well, 2020 was a difficult year, and a lot of people are still reeling from that difficulty. People have lost jobs, people have lost loved ones. People's businesses have not really come back to where it was before. There's a fear of a second wave. So people are doing a lot of remote working. So activities are not to pre-COVID levels. They are still managing. So I do expect that in businesses, people are just still gradually getting better. So it's difficult, but sometimes I guess government just needs to decide which one is more pence net. Do I look at the overall goal of the economy or do I look at now? But if government stays true to its word, we expect pump price to go up.
All right, thank you very much, Bolaho. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a quick break, and then when we come back, we look at the issue of linking the NIN with SIM, and we will be talking to the National President Association of Telecom Subscribers. For now, Nigerians have until January 19 to link their NIN to their SIM or face being disconnected from their networks. If this happens, it will no doubt have telling ripple effects for the economy. According to figures from the National Bureau of Statistics, the telecom sector has contributed 31.8 trillion naira to the country's gross domestic product. Now, in third quarter 2020, it contributed about 17.36% to Nigeria's GDP, making it one of the best performing sectors in a quarter when the country fell into recession. If millions of subscribers are blocked, it is possible that the sector might contract further in the turn of the year. But here is Mr. Adeolu Ogubanjo, President, National Association of Telecom Subscribers, to tell us what his association thinks about this. Thank you very much, sir, for coming on the show, and Happy New Year to you. It's been a while. Good to see you.
Happy New Year.
So tell me, what's the position? You're welcome. What's the position of your association in this whole thing, registration and linking of NIN?
Thank you very much. Linking with NIN is very good because NIN is actually the only means of identification that cannot be faked.
Okay, please. I think we just have to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. Well, Mr. Kumanjo, you were talking about the fact that, yes, linking the SIM to NIN is the right way.
It's the right way. Partly because, one, it cannot be faked because you can fake driver's license, you can issue a fake passport, you can also issue a fake voter's card. But because NIN is centrally generated, it cannot be faked. You know, it's from the central registry. It cannot be faked. And two, because they now are looking at security of Nigerians. You know, but by the time you just type my name, you know, everything about me should pop up. That is what developed nations have, and that is what we want to achieve. But is this the time to do that? Particularly when COVID times are here.
Yeah.
The second wave is here. We are, you know, having too many issues on the front burner. So the time is not now. It shouldn't be now to do these linkages, because a lot of things will be, you know, very, very bad.
So looking at the first deadline was 2 weeks. Then it was shifted to 6 weeks, January 19th. Now is the new deadline. Do you see this being extended?
Definitely. In fact, we must appeal to the Minister for Communication and Digital Economy to please, we are pleading, so that Nigerians will not have COVID, you know, second wave, upsurge. I mean, we are pleading for 6 months. 6 months, because you must temper justice with mercy. Yes, on one hand, you want to secure Nigerians, but when you want to secure Nigerians, you don't want them, you know, they want to be secured to die off. So, COVID second wave is here. For over 2 weeks now, since this directive started, in fact, one may say that it is because of all this, you know, crowding at the centers for NIN registration. You might even, you know, allude that that is what is causing the upsurge, because in the last 2-3 weeks that this thing has been on, cases have always been over 1,000 cases every day. And what can be the cause, if not this?
Now, if you talk about 6 months now, is that still enough? Shouldn't we be talking about, okay, when we're able to actually curb the spread of this virus, which, of course, for now, we really don't know. And then if I would take you back to what you said earlier, that this is not coming at the right time. I remember that the minister had said that this directive was actually given since 2020. That should be sometime in February 2020. But I think the argument there, 2020, I mean, that February, that was when even the COVID started.
Yeah.
Precisely. Most Nigerians are not even aware of the February deadline. I mean, the February the minister was talking about. Most people did not, I mean, we were not aware. But now, because of that, you now came up in December and said 2 weeks initially. I'm saying, in fact, 6 months in the first instance. You look at when the SIM registration, when there was no COVID, no nothing. That was about 4 or 5 years back or something. Initially, it was 3 months, 6 months. 6 months became 1 year. 1 year became 2 years and even more. So I think, you know, in the first instance, if you just for us to, you know, be aware and to get to the centers, in the first instance, 6 months. But there shouldn't be actually a time limit.
Okay, so
there shouldn't be a time limit
maybe
for now,
like a whole
because
year
of
or something.
COVID. For now, because people are getting COVID infected day in, day out. Cases are rising, and it is from these centers. Right. So the minister should be appealed to please shelve this for now.
So as an association,
Yes.
what kind of conversations are you having with the government and mobile operators?
Fortunately, Channels TV had brought my very self and the chairman, Association of Licensed Telecommunications Operators of Nigeria, Engineer Adebayo. We were here together. I mean, he was on Skype. I was in the studio. Yeah. And it was discussed. Of course, because government had directed the operators to do it, he was saying that they will do whatever that is possible. They are trying, you know, ensuring that all their experience centers are, you know, sort of registration centers in a way. And NIMC has also opened some of these other centers here and there. But beyond that is the fact that it is not sufficient. Only 40-something million, as of 2 weeks ago, has been registered. Maybe another 2, 3, 4 million now. We still have over 120 million left.
Now, still taking it from that question, my colleague had asked you the conversation you've had with the government and the operators. Now, one would think we are talking about leveraging on technology.
Yes.
ICT is the way to go. And this is all about technology. So I am wondering, during this COVID time, shouldn't people actually sit, in the comfort of their homes and be able to do this online? Perhaps a NIMC could generate a website where people can, go to and deal with this rather than flocking to their offices. I mean, I thought that should be the kind of conversation and suggestions that associations such as yours could also give to the government.
Thank you very much. Engineer Adebayo, in the last interview we had here at Channels, also said that they were going to, ensure that some applications, emerge for this registration. But beyond that, even when forms are sent to your email to print, and you print and fill at home, and then you take it to the center, the NIMC people will say no.
That's the point. I mean, do we really have to go to that center? Do people really have to go there? I mean, there are people, when you consider, look at, how do you even quantify telecom subscribers?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you have even children have their lines,
Precisely.
Okay, we have old people. So do you expect those people to flock to the center? So I don't know, shouldn't you be having such conversation? How do you bring in those of them in the rural areas?
Sincerely, I must tell you that even the ones that we think is easy, printing of forms, when you send to your email, you now print it and fill at home and just take it to the center so that at least that is easing the process in a way. The officers will say, sorry, you have to take their own form. And it's the same thing. I printed, I saw everything. It's the same everything. And they are saying they still have to give you their own.
Have you raised this issue with any of the government officials, those that are making this policy?
Well, I normally attend to them. I normally face them. They will dismiss me and say, Baba, this is what we are told to do. And what then do I do?
Have you spoken to the minister about this? Have you made suggestions to the minister?
Well, this was on Monday, so because they actually resumed.
So do you have intention of doing
Definitely, we are going to escalate to the minister and the NCC CEO, Professor Dambata.
So looking at the BVN-generated NIN numbers, now there's a new directive now for you to go and verify that if you had a BVN-generated NIN, you have to go and verify it at the office. That's a new development now. What's that about?
First, road safety is also joining now.
Yeah.
And saying that if you don't have your NIN, you can't even do your driver's license anymore. So everything is now, loaded with NIN. Quite honestly and sincerely, I must tell you that these things are coming rather too much. They should space these things. It should be spaced. Government must not, just start loading us with instructions and policies that may not be workable as soon as they wanted it.
Yeah.
It should take time. They must understand that we are so many, over 120 million still to go. And February 19, that is the deadline. Or is it 9 or 19? And I don't know how many they have done. The minister should understand that, and the NCC CEO must understand that this cannot work. They have to at least extend it for the next 6 months. It has to be. All
right. Okay, now, still talking about the BVN and NIN, I saw something in the news today, government saying, or rather, NIMC saying you cannot the names, the BVN or the NIN linked to the BVN, it's you have to
come and verify.
Come and verify it. You have to get to their office to verify. But I'm just wondering, I mean, if I didn't register, okay, for NIN, and then I have a BVN, I'm just wondering how the banks were able to get an NIN because...
And generated, yeah.
Exactly, because I have, spoken to some people who say, okay, they have, I think, a code. Once you have a BVN, you have to dial something, and then you get an NIN number, even when you did not, register the appropriate way you're supposed to register. So where is that coming from? So I'm just wondering, if you've been meeting with both telecom operators and the government, where is this coming from?
I'm sure, with the benefit of hindsight, I'm sure that the BVN must have been having its roots or source from the Nigerian Identity Management Commission, because you cannot generate something like that without, referring to...
So if that is happening, so if you're able to get your BVN...
Don't know.
No, if you're able to get NIN from your BVN, why would NIMC now insist you have to come
and verify?
To verify.
Perhaps because, there are some biometrics involved, your face and all that. Maybe that's the verification process. And
so they don't have enough data.
They don't have enough details and data about
But
yourself.
even your SIM has some biometrics there. I mean, we've done all of this, SIM
registration.
SIM registration and all of that.
Even driver's license, you also have all this.
Absolutely. So shouldn't that, suffice?
In a way, they are trying to harmonize all these sources of data collection. So this is the time they now want to, centralize passport, what do you call it now? Voters card, all of them. This is a time they now want to, centralize them and make it one. But they should not rush. It will affect the health of the people. And we are in COVID-19 pandemic times. They should take it easy and be slow. The minister must be appealed to please at least an initial 6 months extension, and in fact, give us some, time to do it.
Okay. Now, 2020, of course, was a challenging year for, everyone. So for you, as an association, well, we are the subscribers. So
he's our president, right?
Exactly. You are representing us. So, but for you as an association, of telecom subscribers, what was most challenging, for you?
In fact, there hasn't been much, excepting that, during the year, a number of positive things came up in the telecom sector. Telecoms, started being double-digit GDP, and in fact, the telecom sector has been doing very well. So for the telecom sector, it's been wonderful for the economy, But only in the very dying moments of the last quarter, when this came, linking with NIN, and all that, that actually messed up a number of things for subscribers, and it is still messing it up. So there hasn't been much, actually, in the last, 2020, except positive this thing for the economy and business. Again, the only other challenge was the fact that there are a lot of job losses, and it is because in the telecom sector, this is because banks are now taking over the sale of SIM cards. The sale of recharge cards.
Okay.
Rather than leave our people to start selling and at least get something. So banks should lay off their hands and face their core business, and there isn't much job. Yes.
The convenience of buying.
Exactly, because
you will see them here and there.
No, you can't just, walk up and down, start scratching cards.
I remember when last night I scratched.
Give our traders some time to at least do the selling. Banks shouldn't be selling recharge cards. Leave it so that people can be gainfully employed.
Anyway, what's your outlook for 2021 for the sector?
Well, I would want a situation where, first and foremost, this is extended. This NIN linking with your SIM is extended, as well as ensuring that, for God's sake, the NCC should visit the underserved areas of Nigeria and ensure that the infrastructure provision for, the infracos, that is the people providing the infrastructure for telecoms, go to the rural areas so that they can also get the benefit of trading in telecoms. They should go to the underserved areas, the rural areas, and ensure that people there are also engaged, because the moment they go there, take their mobile, their mass there, it encourages business growth.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Ogubanjo, for your time. We do appreciate it, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we take a break, and then when we come back, we cross over to London, and of course, we look at what happened at the market here in our local market. Just stay with us.
And now for updates from London, let's talk to Juliana. Hello, Juliana.
Hi, Laddie. Good morning.
Good to see you. Morrison's has become the first UK supermarket to break the £10 an hour pay barrier, just as the spotlight is being shown on poor pay levels in an industry where workers are in the front line of the pandemic. What are you learning about this?
Well, yeah, we talk a lot about critical workers and key workers here in the UK, and most of the time people that work in supermarkets get left right at the bottom of that chain. So Morrison's have decided that their 96,000 strong staff deserve a pay rise. Many of them are on roughly £9.40 per hour, but in April that will rise to £10 an hour, which I've calculated is about 7,000 naira per hour. Citizens UK have calculated that across Britain there are about 500,000 supermarket workers that are working below the minimum wage. We have different levels of wages here in the UK, and there is the minimum wage and the living wage. Now, the living wage in London is estimated to be about £10.85 an hour, and that's how much it's deemed you need to be earning in order to survive living in the capital. Across Britain, it's about £9.50 an hour, and all of these disparities between the very, very rich and the very poor have really been given a spotlight during the pandemic, particularly in the supermarket industry, where some of the FTSE 350 bosses are obviously earning 6-7 figures and their staff are barely eating. So yes, this is a good story. David Potts, he's the chief exec at Morrison's, one of the big four supermarkets. He described this new rate as a symbolic and important milestone.
Okay, still looking at shopping. Tesco, Asda and Waitrose have become the latest supermarkets to say they will deny entry to shoppers who do not wear face masks unless they are medically exempt. Is it that people are still not complying to the COVID-19 protocols?
Well, the short answer is yes. People are still not complying. In fact, I find it absolutely mind-boggling that people in the UK still not complying with the restrictions, especially considering thousands upon thousands of people are dying every single week. And this week, the government have really been cracking down on policing and just ensuring that people are sticking to basic restrictions. And the most basic of them all is wearing your face mask, particularly in supermarkets. Retailers have been under the spotlight this week because so many people have complained that security staff and staff within supermarkets are not asking people to adhere to the rules. And I think supermarkets are under the spotlight because they are one of the only stores that are open. And of course, because people have been panic buying, you do see some big crowds, and some are saying that unlike in the spring, in March, during the first lockdown, where there were queues and there were restrictions and people were forced to sanitize and basically adhere to rules. People are not doing that. Now, there have been some retailers that said they are going to comply, but they've pointed out that it's not really their responsibility, that that's the responsibility of the police. But the police are saying they're just too busy. So they've tried to find a middle ground, and the middle ground is that some supermarkets will be asking their security staff to stop people unless they have a very serious reason for not wearing masks. And it's important to mention that there are some reasons why some people can't wear masks because of their health or because of anxiety reasons, yes.
So I guess no mask, no shopping then. Anyway, and on a sad note, Sir David Barclay, one of the billionaire brothers who owns the Telegraph newspaper group, has died after a short illness at age 86. They were estimated to be worth about £7 billion.
Yes, Sir David Barclay has sadly passed away. His death was announced in the Telegraph, the media paper group that the twin brothers owned. He's thought to have died on Sunday. Very, very, very little information out there about his life and his death, because the Barclay twins are notoriously quiet over the years. The only real evidence or information or insight that the British public have been able to have about their lives is through the courts, really. And most recently, we know that the two twin brothers have been having a fierce battle over some of their assets. As you said, they were media. Well, Sir David Barclay was a media mogul, but his reach wasn't just in media. They also once owned the Ritz and the Cavendish hotels in London. That was part of their massive property portfolio. They were also involved in shipping and in retail. So pretty sad day. According to this report that I read in the Financial Times this morning, Sir David Barclay is thought to have retired in 1990s, and that's how long he's been out of the spotlight or been signing deals in the business. And his sons, Aidan and Howard, have been taking lead roles ever since. So yes, R.I.P. to Sir David
R.I.P.
Barclay.
All right, Juliana, thank you, and do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
And now for the debt and currency markets. Eddie is back on board. Hello, Eddie.
Good morning, Ladi. Well,
Morning.
just before we go to the debt and currencies market, let's just talk about the equities markets. And I'm being joined by Abdul Rashid Momo, a stockbroker. Good morning, Mr. Momo. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning.
Well, yesterday we saw the market up by about 0.36%. However, we saw huge turnover of volume and value yesterday. What drove sentiment?
You know, what you need to know that this period, I normally target the Nigerian investor, in quotes. This is the best period Nigerian investors came because of end of year payment of dividends. You know, so these are the periods where you see lots of trades happening because people want to benefit from the year-end dividends. And from what you've seen from the forecast, most of the companies seem to be doing well, and the projected dividends are likely going to be in place, especially from the banking sector. So basically, this is when we see a lot of activities happening till February, when we start waiting for the first quarter to see how the year 2021 is going to be. But for now, basically, it's more of dividends driven. That's why we are seeing such volumes now.
All right, Mr. Momo. Well, we'll just keep watching as investors take position in the market and drive stocks up. Thank you for your input on the program. Do enjoy the rest of the day. Mr. Momo is a stockbroker. Now, let's just, before we go to debt and currencies market, as I said, we had huge turnover of volume. We saw about 1.16 billion shares worth 7.96 billion naira, all traded in 5,591 deals. Now, the sectoral performance was mostly positive. However, we saw profit taking on shares of Zenith Bank, Access Bank, FBN Holdings, GT Bank, Wema Bank, and some other lenders. The consumer goods sector was up yesterday. We saw gains in Dangote Sugar. Industrial goods was up. Of course, Dangote Cement also gained yesterday. As an analyst said, investors that missed out on the share buyback program are just positioning themselves in that stock. So that sector was up yesterday. Insurance was up 3.61%. While oil and gas gained 0.51%. Now, the fixed income market, the bonds market continued on its bearish trend yesterday. Now, we saw yields at the short and yields at the short end, I beg your pardon, declined, while yields at the mid and the long end of the curve, increased. We had 21 deals worth 10.08 billion naira. But let's talk to Apewe Oputu, a fixed income dealer at Access Bank. Good morning, Apewe. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on the program.
Well, we have the first primary market auction today, and investors in the treasury bill space have been focused on that. What are your expectations from that auction?
Okay, so we actually expect a slight increase in the rates this time around because the volume on offer is relatively high when you compare to the last auction. On the long tenor, we have about 199 billion on offer this time around compared to the 44 billion that was done, and with the stop rate closing at 1.21% the last time. So the volume this time is relatively high. So we expect that there'll be more demand skewed towards the long end of the curve, and that would actually push the rates higher than what we saw the last time.
All right, Apewe, thank you for your input on the program. We'll keep watching, and keeping track of those numbers. Apewe Oputu is a fixed income dealer at Access Bank. Well, that's it on the market review for today.
All right, thank you, Eddie. We're looking at that auction there. Total of 232 to be raised by the Debt Management Office. And of course, you talked about investors taking position, apparently because of the dividend payout. Yeah? Well, let's just hope things pan out very well. MPC is next week, and I'm sure they are also looking forward to the direction that the Monetary Policy Committee is going to give. And for you, Bitcoin man, how is it doing today, this morning? Down,
yes, well, down, but stable. So
regulators have warned you. Be careful.
We are careful.
Okay, that's it on the program. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago.
And I'm Ladi Williams. Thank you for watching.